when China depegs the currency from the dollar, which they're going to have to do soon, Swiss style, there won't be any gold on the market anywhere. If you're an American, particularly, get your head out of the sand. I mean, get ready. Bad things are coming.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. Today our returning guest is Andy Hoffman, Media Director at Miles Franklin and a well-known commentator on the gold, silver, and precious metals market. Thank you for rejoining us here on Reluctant Preppers, Andy.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be back.
We've had some pretty remarkable events recently going on in the world, so I wanted you back specifically for two main focuses today. One is what in the world is going on with currencies. We've been talking in the past about the fragility and the vulnerability and risks associated with fiat currencies, and developments recently, such as in Switzerland. I'd really like to get your perspective on and what that signals about the deteriorating status of fiat currencies and the risks that imposes, bringing it down to the individual family level at the end of that. And then secondly, if you can, at the start of 2015 here, if you could just give us a high-level outlook of what you see, the dynamics that you're watching for to play out in 2015 in the precious metals markets. A lot of our listeners have been either accumulating hard assets or considering starting that, and what factors should they be considering looking into this year. So if we could circle back to the beginning and have you give us some perspectives on, you had talked to us in the past about concerns about real and present dangers to over-reliance on fiat currencies, and what are you seeing now playing out in the world that gives additional light to that?
Okay, well, first of all, when people talk about currencies, I mean, there's so many misnomers out there. People don't even know how to define deflation or inflation, and when it comes to currencies, they don't understand that the dollar, the euro, all these things, they are not money. As you were told, they are currencies, meaning they one of the definitions, one of the definitional parameters of money is that it's a means of exchange, which of course the dollar and the euro are, although certainly not universally. In fact, the dollar, it may be the reserve currency, but except for the United States and a handful of other places, you really can't use it anywhere. And of course, all these fiat currencies are not backed by anything. They're backed by the balance sheets of sovereign nations and the promises to maintain the value of them. And of course, all 599 fiat currencies throughout history have failed because of the balance sheets and the confidence failing. And this is what's now happening today, first time in history, where it's the entire world is not backed by anything. Every single currency is backed simply by balance sheets of governments and their promises. And every one of them, without question, is seeing an explosion parabolically of debt and explosion downward of confidence in their ability to manage it. And of course, the central banks are the executives who run the currency, and they've run these currencies into the ground. And of course, the Swiss National Bank and this morning the ECB have shown just how little credibility that they have. And of course, once the credibility goes, the confidence goes, etc. Now, what's been going on with currencies, which I've been talking about for years, is you get all these people, even in our community, saying the dollar is going to collapse, the dollar is going to collapse, and they don't understand what the dollar means. If you're talking about the dollar index, which is what everyone focuses on, that's just a dollar in a basket against a bunch of other fiat currency trash, particularly the euro and the yen, also the pound and a handful of others, but mainly the euro. So when you say the dollar is going to crash, you're implying the dollar could actually destroy itself against the euro, which literally is not even going to be around. So obviously that's not possible. And in the case of Japan, with its demographic nightmare and its 250% debt to GDP, there's not a possibility that the United States dollar could fall materially against the Japanese yen. So no, the U.S. dollar index, it's impossible for it to fall because there's absolutely no event on the planet that could be that bad for the world, but good for other currencies relative to the dollar. And what I've been saying for years is, you look back at 2008 when you had this crisis. The crisis was started, in many ways by the U.S. subprime lending bubble, and back then the dollar soared. Because it's the reserve currency, it's the most liquid in the world. Not because there's anything good about it or this U.S. is strong, because it's liquid, that's all. And here we are today, the same thing has happened, but to a much bigger extent. So while we're talking about recovery and everything's great, the U.S. dollar has exploded above the 2008 levels, just like the commodity indexes. Some of them are below the 2008 lows, and some of them are right there, like the CRB commodity index. So again, we're being told we're in this recovery, but all signs are pointing to things being much worse. I mean, look at global interest rates. They are much lower now than they were in 2008. Even here, that's incredible to show you how the veneer of this, supported stock market is. And again, when we're talking about currency crashes, that's an understatement. Around the world, since 2011, which is really since the real money printing started, when Operation Twist and QE3 and Abenomics and the OMT and LTRO in Europe, when they all started, that's when the currency started really crashing, because that's when the money printing, the inflation was exported around the world en masse. And it's only gotten worse. And now that the commodities are crashing because of all the overcapacity caused by a plunging economy and all the, the malinvestment, we're seeing all the currencies that are backed by, commodity economies in true free fall. The Russian ruble gets all the attention, but look at the Indonesian rupiah, the Nigerian naira, the Canadian dollar, Australian dollar. I mean, there's a lot of people that live in these places. And now, of course, as the final currency war takes shape, because the worse these economies get, the more the politicians think, well, we have to weaken our currency because that means we'll be more internationally competitive and get more jobs. The problem is it doesn't work. I mean, look at Japan. They've been doing this for 20 years. Look at the ECB. It's not working. Look at QE3. Didn't work here. Or our manufacturing business is as low as it's ever been. And now it's really going into free fall. So the politicians are really trying to reduce the value of their currencies, and this is, the active race to the bottom that we get to. Last week with the Swiss National Bank, it's not like I haven't been predicting this for months. I mean, look at their balance sheet. They couldn't support. They're a tiny little country. They couldn't support a peg with the euro. Are you kidding me? And so, of course, it blew up, and it blew up only weeks after they promised, don't vote for the gold referendum, because if you do, we won't be able to support the peg. 3 weeks later, they went to negative interest rates, and 3 more weeks they broke the peg, which will have devastating impacts around the world on the financial community, on the credibility of central banks. And then, of course, you have today the ECB. They announced their QE program. Yesterday, they leaked that it was going to be 50 billion euros a month for 2 years, a little over a trillion euros. But the euro didn't fall enough on that trial balloon leaking, so they raised it this morning to 60 billion. So again, they're showing not only a lack of credibility, but that you can almost picture being in their boardroom, running around like chickens without heads, like, oh, 50 is not enough, let's do 60. Should we do 70? No, how about 60? We can always raise it. I mean, that's what's going on here. The currencies are collapsing. The euro is the most widely used currency in the world, even more than the United States. And it is in free fall, Ruble-style, as I speak. Ruble-style. It's that bad. So, yes, this is now what you're seeing, the end game where all the central banks lose credibility entirely. And the last to go, the final boom, or that the bang to end all bangs will be when Janet Yellen, of course, reverses this scheme that they've had for the last 2 years. It started in April 2013 of pretending we're going to taper and then we're going to raise rates and let's just smash gold and boost the Dow and make everyone think that. But it's not working. Commodities are crashing, bond yields are crashing, etc. Eventually, possibly she's going to have to start talking about it on next Wednesday at their meeting if they can't turn the markets in their favor, and if not, later this year. And then, of course, you have all the other currency issues going on, like the Chinese yuan. The Chinese just reported their worst GDP growth rate in 25 years, and because they're pegged to the dollar, their currency is soaring, and they want it to be lower, so they're going to have to depeg also, like the Swiss franc, although it'll be much bigger. So if you ask me what I think is going to happen in 2015, everyone could go to my blog or just Google 2014 review and 2015 predictions. I did an audio blog on a few weeks ago. I think this is the end of the credibility of central banks. I think it's the end of all the games. I think it's the understanding that we're in an era of QE to infinity, and that there's no way of reversing the deformations of the economy and the financial markets. And right now, most currencies in the world, gold is exploding against. I mean, as we speak, Japanese yen gold is about to hit an all-time high. Canadian and Australian dollar are just 11% from their high. Even euro gold now is only 17% from its high. So as more and more people get fearful, more and more people are going to buy precious metals, and more people are going to challenge whatever it is that the central banks do. And the beauty of gold and silver are that they are the most inelastic goods you're going to find in the world, a Giffen good as they call it, meaning that the higher the price, the more that people want it. And in the case of other commodities, when it goes up, it's all due to greed. In the case of gold and silver, it goes up because of greed and fear, of course. And so what you're seeing right now, I mean, think about it. If you're in Japan and they're expanding Abenomics, they're going berserk, the economy's falling apart, and gold's hitting an all-time high. I mean, this is kind of akin to what we saw in the United States in 2011 when, we were downgraded. It was at that time, of course, where we pulled out our big bazooka of market manipulation and propaganda, and we bought ourselves a couple of years. But now those couple of years are up. And, the way I put it with fiat currency, the reserve currency is the head, and the rest of the world is the body. And so this cancer that affects every fiat currency in time. It starts in the limbs and it spreads across the body. The weakest countries are the ones that see it first. That's why you've seen, countries like Greece fall apart and Argentina. And then eventually it spreads to the bigger countries. And now you're seeing Japan, Europe falling apart. And of course, that means we're almost up to the head, which is the United States. And when the head goes, the whole thing goes. And that's why, Americans are blessed because this manipulation of the dollar and the gold price to actually be able to buy it today at below the cost of production. And in silver's case, way below the cost of production. At a time where you need it the most. It's very rare in time where you actually can buy something that's of maximum need at a good price. Because remember, 2013 was all-time record high demand worldwide for gold and silver, and 2014 broke that record. And thus far, in just the first few weeks of 2015, demand is surging above those levels. I think I read that just the areas that reported in China reported 61 tons imported in the first week of January. I mean, that's 50% above last year's level. So again, we've had shortages in these metals for the last 5 or 6 years since the crisis began. The most notable was 2008 when it was both gold and silver. But in silver, we had shortages in 08 and 11 and 13 and 14. And I think the next one is going to be the one where you're not getting any for a long, long time. Certainly not at prices anywhere near this. So, how people could look at the Swiss, the European bank, all these things and not realize how close we are to the end game and not protect themselves even a little bit is absolutely beyond me. I mean, just to finish the thought, we talk about the mainstream media whose job is to just, puppet what the powers that be want them to say. I just published an article, and I talked about it on my audio blog today, where I showed 4 articles in one day. One from CNBC, one from Bloomberg, one from the New York Times, and one from MarketWatch, all saying the ECB is doomed, the Fed is doomed, they can't do it anymore, they're failing. I mean, can you imagine? They're all realizing it at once. And while the flashpoint was the Swiss bank announcement, it's now becoming a universal. It's traveling virally. And believe me, what the ECB did today is only going to make things exponentially worse. And I can't emphasize enough, the Fed is in a major box because they have a meeting next week. And remember, when they had their meeting in December and they were propping the stock market, they didn't change anything. They didn't even take considerable time out. Janet Yellen said, don't worry, everything's fine, and the oil price drop is transitory. Well, here we are. It's clearly not transitory, and things are clearly not fine. And just yesterday alone, the 30-year Treasury bond hit an all-time low yield. So it's going to be pretty tough for them to keep pretending nothing's wrong and saying, oh, yeah, everything's fine, don't worry. We're going to raise rates sometime later this year in a considerable time. No, at some point she's going to have to address it. And if not this Wednesday, it's going to be sometime soon. And when it does, gold and silver are going to go offerless.
So summarizing what you've been walking us through, it sounds like from the common person's standpoint is just to be aware that a lot of the, we could call them doom and gloom predictions about vulnerabilities in the fiat currencies around the world are actually being seen to play out in real concrete actions that are being taken by world governments this year, and that the momentary depression that's been present, or the suppression that's been present in the price of precious metals, is an opportunity for people to diversify, or at least to provide themselves some backing by accumulating gold and silver. Looks like that opportunity may be coming to an end, so that people should really, if they've been sitting on the fence, if they've been waiting for the right time, this shows a lot of hallmarks of being a time that people should take action.
Well, if you live in these other countries, and I don't mean like a handful of other countries, I mean like Europe. I mean like if you live anywhere else, you are seeing it right now. Of course, in the United States, if you work in the oil patch and many other industries, you are seeing it right now. So it's already, the cancer is visible everywhere. It's just a matter of time where it becomes an absolute Ebola contagion. I mean, and that could be, the way things are going, it could be weeks. I mean, we're not talking about years away. And so, again, most of the world is seeing this already. Think about it. If you're in Europe right now and you've just watched the euro fall from I think it was 130, it's 114 right now. That is a massive increase in inflation. And yet you just had the central bank say today, but inflation's not high enough. We're going to really debase the currency. And that's Europe, where the smartest people, the richest people live. You think they're not going to be buying? Let alone China. And God, when China depegs the currency from the dollar, which they're going to have to do soon, Swiss style, you think that this is a big deal. There won't be any gold on the market anywhere for any time imaginable. So yes, if you're an American, particularly, get your head out of the sand. And I'm not just talking about gold and silver. Your website is telling people to get ready in general. Get ready. Bad things are coming.
Yeah, that is our tagline, that we are here to help you be aware and prepared. And it's been difficult through a lot of these stages to predict timing on things, but it certainly is clear that a lot of the signs and warnings that people have been cautioning us we will see are starting to play out. And so we really appreciate you being here to help us understand and to have your perspective on those. Any further thoughts you'd like to leave with our viewers before we let you go, Andy?
Nothing new other than, look, Miles Franklin, we're one of the biggest bullion dealers in the country. We've been around 26 years. Just give us a call, 800-822-8080, or email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com.
As always, Andy, thank you for rejoining us here and sharing your insights with us and our viewers on reluctantpreppers.com. Great to have you.
Thanks very much.